Welcome to Conversations with Educators, where we bring educators from across the country to talk about topics like college and career readiness, graduation tracking, teacher growth, assessment coordination, and more. Let's get started.
Okay, well, we're going to go ahead and be respectful of your time. I am so glad to see you all today, and we want to thank you for taking the time to join us for our webinar series, Conversations with Educators. Today's topic is navigating post-secondary readiness, and we're excited to have a veteran, very knowledgeable counselor to share with us today, and we're looking forward to getting her insights. So our guest speaker today is Libby Ritchie. She's the academic counselor, and let's see. Well, how do you say it?
Wapahani.
Wapahani High School. I'm so sorry, Libby. We also have Robbie Grimes joining us, who is a former Indiana educator as well. And today's topic, we're going to be talking about the counselor's role in post-secondary readiness and best practices for long-term student success with that post-secondary planning and what counselors can do to help with that. From Education Advanced, we make things easier. We want to support uh, our educators in the trenches. And as former educators ourselves, we're always looking for ways to impact, save time, and provide you with quality materials. So with that, I'm going to ask you, Libby, to share a little bit about how counselors can help in the post-secondary readiness, especially in light of used to was always college only. You know, we're college readiness. It's now expanded to college, career, and military readiness. So there's been a shift in that. But how do the counselors factor in, and what have you seen change over time?
We have really seen a change. I'm in a rural school here in East Central Indiana. And just over the years, I have done this. I've been in education, whether I was a teacher or counselor this is my 31st year, so I'm old. But I have seen a lot of different changes from here in Indiana. We went through a school to work phase, a tech prep phase, a lot of different things that you see in education will come through the system. And I think it's kind of always been there, but how do we get there, and how does that mold into getting our students to see this huge world that's out there for them? And so in I would say the last 10 years, I have pushed really hard. It just started bothering me how much we focus on college, college, college. And I just had back surgery a week ago. So I need my doctor. I need a pharmacist. I need a teacher. I need lawyers. I need those people, but I also need someone to fix my car, and I need someone, to serve on the front lines for our military. And so I just felt like we were not all in a cookie cutter box here. And so what are we doing to help promote those other things, besides just shoving college down their throats constantly? And I was really struggling with that with myself, of what was I doing. And so, um, just personally, my personal story that I love more than anything, and my daughter probably cringes that I tell it, but both of my husband is a former principal, and we both been in education. Our kids went to a four-year college. They're doing what they need to do. My son-in-law graduated, had an academic honors diploma here from Indiana, and graduated and went into a trade. And as I look at him now, he's not quite 30. He is the one that has lots of opportunity. People aren't throwing enough money at him. He's not applying for jobs, and they're coming after him. He got a 2-year degree at Ivy Tech through the automotive. He has done an apprenticeship with them, and now he is at the top that you can do with General Motors. My daughter, who has a 4-year degree, people aren't banging her doors down quite like they are with my son-in-law. So I keep saying he needs to be on a poster, because and I've had lots of conversations with him, like, how do we get this news out there? He was a very structured, somebody who had family to support him and to help him come up with things. And he had good counselors where he went to school. But what about those kids that don't have any support? You know, a lot of times school, whether we like it or not, we have become a little bit more of a parent role. I feel that on a daily basis on many levels. But how are we connecting them with all these opportunities? And so one of the things that we decided to focus on was we always have a lot of military. They're very good about coming into our schools. We have them come in during lunchtime and they set up and they talk to kids and they recruit and they build relationships. Our colleges are super good with their recruiters coming in and meeting with kids and getting them on campus and doing college visits. What are the employers doing? And so we were hearing a cry of, we want your kids in our manufacturing. We have all this great stuff, but we can't find people to hire. So my thing was, I want to start trying to help these employers get into my school, just like the other two groups do, and start building those relationships. So they're not probably going to start out at the job that they're going to hire into, but if they can get in there and understand the people and become loyal, and all of a sudden that employer showing up at their game or their function, you know, it's just building these relationships and it's making the connections to help these kids with the next phase of life. And so that's kind of been a push that we have been trying to wrap this side of Indiana around, is just building the relationships more with the employer and trying to get more people surround these kids at any level, not just the high school. The younger, the better. And so we've done some different things. I always say it takes a village, the counselor, the principal, everybody, no matter what you do in a school, you have it all on your plate. So the more that can jump in, getting students involved, helping them to be part of the process, I think that has been really good. But anything we can do to build relationships, it just always goes back to those relationships.
Yeah, I think that's so true. And of course, the Perkins funding requires that you have that advisory council. And so connecting with the community, because you're right, Libby, the workforce is bleeding out as far as they need a pipeline of workers. And so having those things in place, inviting them into the school, getting them engaged in that advisory council meeting, I think those are definite opportunities for growth. What other things can you think of that counselors could be doing to help support that post-secondary readiness?
Well, I think, again, it looks different at every level. My mom was a first grade teacher. I'm scared to death of elementary, so I'm not good at speaking towards them, but I know with our elementary, you know, what their career exploration looks like is very different from our middle school and high school. I think you start young, just getting them some ideas and just letting them see what's out there. Our state in Indiana, we're mandated to do a career fair. One thing that I love that our school does, our student council is super strong, and our leaders of that decided that they would have the kids buy into it. So they actually put together our career fair that we're mandated to do. But instead of just walking around tables, we give a career assessment to all of our students. We take the top careers that we're seeing out of that, and we get speakers to come in. We divide them up, the kids divide them up, the student council does, into groups. And so they're listening for a half hour of what is this career? What does it do? Like they're hearing from the actual people, getting to ask questions and that kind of thing. And the kids, I think putting that career fair on, it has given them more ownership of it as well. And they're learning about things that they weren't even sure that they knew about. So it's been really nice because it's become a village. It's not just something, you know, just on the counselor's plate. But I think those kinds of activities are good. Any type of field trip, any type of tour, taking the career interest test, having guest speakers come into your classrooms, and tying what you're learning to the workplace. Whether you're teaching math, science, social studies, a CTE class, you know, how does this tie into the world of work? Anything to just make that connection. Virtual tours, college tours. Our military, we have such good recruiters. They come in, the kids know them by name. They do some really fun things with them. It's just with kids, it really and truly is about relationships. And I always say, okay, maybe this won't work out for you, but if maybe they can help tie you to somebody, that can help. You just never know where something's going to go. So I just think the more, depending on where you live, like what it looks like for me in a rural school is going to be different from somebody who works in, Indianapolis. But just knowing your community and your resources and what you have and what's needed and getting to know the kids. I'm in a situation where I have 400 kids on my plate, so that's not too bad. So I can sit down with them and say, tell me what you want to do. What are your plans? We tie that to, okay, well, here's a diploma type that will help maybe get your credential, help you get some dual credit, help you, launch yourself a little bit, help make these ties. So again, relationships, I don't I don't pretend to know everything, but I will find somebody who knows that can help me. And just using any resource I can to tie kids together with somebody. I think that's extremely important at any level that we can do.
Yeah, that's so true. I know one school, they invited in the community to do mock interviews, and I participated in that as a education public educator, where you go in and actually just walk through a mock interview with students, and it was really neat to make a connection and to form a relationship there. So I think kids really respond to those types of activities, and it also opens the door, because sometimes there's that misnomer that those kids, or high school kids, and that what they walk away with is how impressed they are with the students that we have in our schools. And I don't think that's always portrayed in the media or, around. So I think it's really a great opportunity to make those connections. And you're so right about relationship building. So, okay, you mentioned you have 400 students, which is a lot. And I know there are counselors that have more than 400 that they serve. So, what are some best practices for tracking all that and logging, and counseling with students and meeting with them? And what are some of your strategies that you use that would help other counselors kind of organize and keep track of all that?
I'm glad my husband's not here because I have terrible anxiety. Afraid I'm gonna miss something, afraid I don't want to mess anybody up. But so I probably overkill, but in Indiana changes things a lot on what's required to graduate. We're getting ready to reinvent high school, so we're gonna see what that's gonna look like. But there might be sometimes in our state where there's 4 classes and there's little things in there where I'm doing 3 different ways to graduate. So being old school, I still have my paper trail just in case. I always say if something happens to me, somebody can come in and pick up where I left off. Um, Using the Education Advanced has done a great thing with our graduation pathways. I couldn't do it without their software. It's literally the easiest thing in the world. I'm trying everybody. We've actually, my husband and I were able to testify with our educational committee, our Senate committee, just to get that to be like the software, because our kids are able to go to any school in Indiana. And so when they're going from this school to that school, you've got documents trailing them and you've got all these different things. And so it's so easy when a kid transfers to just be able to look at this screen and see a red light or a green light, to just see that they've got this documentation, to just see what it is. It saves me so much money or time. And so I use that a lot. I think the hardest part is just getting it set up, but once you get that initial setup and just working out all the kinks between the tech department and you, it has been an absolute lifesaver. And it's been nice when, like I said, when kids transfer schools, just to have that data follow them. You're not chasing things and, not putting the student at harm at all, when they do transfer school. But I just think record keeping is so important. I am in a school, I'm getting ready to retire. I am very fortunate in that my administration, our board, our staff understands the way the school counseling program should work. And so 2 years ago was probably one of the hardest years of my career, between the social emotional aspect and the academic. All day long, I did nothing but social emotional, and it was big, big stuff. and it would just, I couldn't get any of my academic things done. And so I would go home and then I would work till 10 or 11 every night. I worked every weekend. I worked every holiday. Like I never had a break, and my mental health was starting to suffer. And so I collect a lot of data. I have learned, being married to an administrator, they speak data. And so I collected my data to show, here's why this is not working and I'm not serving my students well enough. And I can't continue to do this. And so they split my job into two different. So we've got the social emotional aspect, and then we've got the academic. And so I took the academic side. So that has really freed me up to do a lot more things, I think, that are going to help kids in these situations and to connect a little bit differently. Because 2 years ago, it was hard for a kid who just had an academic question to get to me because I had a crying student, in my office. And so we're not unique to that. I think that's where we are in our world today. You've got to take care of the social emotional aspect before any of this other takes place. And for them to be successful. So I'm really fortunate that I think we've figured that out. We've also created, and I don't know if other states have this, but we have a JAG program that we've started this year where it's just another layer of support to help with both social emotional and the academic side, connecting them to jobs, post-secondary education, training, anything like that, military. That's been just huge. Anything where you can connect to a group of people that is going to walk alongside the school. I think people want to help. I just don't know that they know how to help. Schools are such a different thing than the world of work, the industry. So, anything you can do to just bridge that gap and form those relationships, even with yourself, to say, can you do this? Like, I'm always scared to ask people for money, or because I'm used to, in education, you don't have any. And they'll say, oh, we can do that. That's a piece of cake. And then you're like, oh. So you just find like little tiny things that you can do to, if it makes it better for 5 kids, at least you've maybe gotten to those 5 kids. I don't think you have to start out huge, but I think you find what works and then you just start wiggling your way through and you just keep making those connections until something starts taking off. And I do think you have to not be a control freak like I can be. And you have to let other people help, because when people buy in, whether it's the students, the parents love to help, whether it's the staff, it's a community event and everybody's going to win from it.
Yeah, that's so key on the ownership, like you mentioned with the student council owning the career fair. I think that's such a great idea to empower students. But you're right, there's a lot of people that don't know how they can connect, but are willing to help and support too. So, Robbie, did you want to add anything real quick as we open up the questions and answer section? If you've got a
Yeah,
question that you would like to ask Libby, go ahead and drop it in. But Robbie, why don't you share for a couple minutes?
I was just going to say the career coaching framework that Indiana is kind of put out there at the early grades is something that we are looking into and considering as well, knowing that that's another thing that by elementary counselors are going to have to be tracked, and make sure that each student has gone through each of the required steps in those different levels of 3 to 5 and 6 to 8 and even down into pre-K to 2, but making sure that all of those requirements for experiences that those students have been able to sit through are met. And so we are looking into being able to track that as in addition, because a lot of that information is already in Pathways, and we are looking into adding a couple of pieces that would make it obvious that these particular students have completed those particular requirements, and these students have not, and these need some attention. So just wanted to kind of bring that up, because a lot of what Libby was talking about is, coaching toward a career, whatever that happens to be, and whatever pathway that happens to be. Maybe not necessarily college, maybe not necessarily military, but in any pathway. Yeah, when I was in the classroom, we gave the I-step. I had so many students who couldn't pass the I-step, and it was unfortunate that those students, they felt like they had failed, and they were not failures. They were absolutely success stories, but they just couldn't pass a test. And I really applaud Indiana and states who are moving away from a GQE test and moving toward multiple opportunities for students to be able to be successful, because we need all kinds of people in our society, not just ones who can complete tests and pass tests.
Yeah.
So
And I
the career coaching framework is something that's on our radar.
And I think too, something that was key for us was we between our elementary, our middle school, and our high school, we just got so busy in our daily activities. You know, I've got all this on my plate, and we didn't have time for the counselors to connect from each level. And when we did a Lily's grant, we wrote that grant, and that forced us to that process to sit down and talk. What do you do at the elementary? What do you do at the middle school? What do you do at the high school? And as the counselors, we grew to be better friends, but we also were able to say, well, when this kid was in elementary, you know, here's what we did with it. Like, it was so helpful, and just even spurring ideas off of each other. It may be really different of what we do at the high school, but they can take it at the elementary and spin it on their own. So I think we then started having monthly meetings with our whole team of, let's just talk. Nothing specific, and conversation just rolled, and we saw a difference. And I think that as the kids transferred from one school level to the next, I think that was helpful as well, because it was more fluid. You know, we were seeing, we also implemented a mentoring program. Our elementary does such a good job with, you know, mentoring kids and kids who need extra. And I thought, you know, I got kids at the high school who just need love. They just need to hear something from somebody. They just want somebody to listen to them. And so we copied, a little different, but we copied what they were doing. And so now we've got mentors at all three levels. And even that has been very helpful with trying to get them set up, you know, with something with the future. So even just the communication piece within your counseling departments, I think, is extremely vital of how you're helping kids and helping this process.
Yeah, that collaboration is so important. And you can modify it for the different levels, but a lot of those great ideas brought forth by one level can be used at another. So that's a great, great insight there. One of the questions is, how are we preparing for the new graduation requirements? I know for pathways, we are monitoring that. We're involved in the meetings, and once that is finalized, hopefully the end of December, we'll be able to build that into the product. But Libby, what are you doing differently, or what are some of your thoughts about how that's going to shift as we move towards more acquiring seals and not the core 40? And what are some suggestions you have for that?
Well, I'm retiring. That's how I'm handling it. No, I'm very much in the process of working with it, because we've got to start implementing this for August. And the timeline is very stressful of how are we reintroducing high school, and we've got a very short time to do it. I like the second draft that they've put out there better than the first. I had a lot of concerns that we were going too far the other way on not having enough rigor, but I think that they have fixed that. And there's a few things that I worry about, but I think it's going to be pretty cool. I think it's going to lend itself to being a little bit more flexible for kids. Like Robbie, I had a really hard time with kids feeling like failures because they couldn't pass a test. Like, it's a test. It's a snapshot in time. You're going to be fine in life. 10 years, you will not care about this ISTEP test. So I like that. I like the opportunities it's going to give some of these kids to explore things a little bit more. There are some things that maybe make me a little nervous with a smaller school, or if I think of like rural Indiana, like really rural Indiana places, there's some things, but I know that people will figure this out. I just think we're going to have to be creative. I think the biggest concern for me is just the timeline, and how, just getting this off the ground and being trained and making sure that everybody in Indiana is on the same page and we're setting this up correctly, because it's too big of a responsibility to not get it right. So that's probably my biggest concern, but I think that it has some really good possibilities for some students, and I think we'll be okay. But I think that people need to start planning now. We're having all kinds of meetings. If this goes, here's how we're going to do it. If this happens, here's what we're going to do. So there's just a lot of people like me who I need, I do this on this time, and here's when I start my scheduling. We've got to kind of step back and just say, okay, I'm going to drink this in, need some training, and then we're going to go forward and we will figure this out and we will get there. So, but people are just gonna have to work together and
Yes, I think having that collaboration and communication between different departments is going to be very important as a curriculum instruction, because there's a lot of course flexibility, right? So how are we building those courses out in the pathways, and then looking at the different seals and, like you said, the training and stuff. So we're staying on top of it as well.
Yeah, but anybody, if you're watching and you don't use the Education Advanced software, like it was a life changer for me in my job just when Pathways came out, because it was one more thing. I just thought it's one more thing to track, and you just start sometimes feeling so overwhelmed, and it's important. You don't want to miss anything because you mess up, your kids fail. So, um, just something, what you guys do is such a huge walk beside. Like it's a life changer. And it's kind of giving me my sanity back. So we're still working on that. But it's been huge. And so I can't stress enough how important that software is of helping this. And it's somebody else from a different perspective, I think. Robbie's got the educational background, but he's also now into a different industry, but he's got two different perspectives coming at this. And I think that's really helpful as well, just to see what he's seeing, not being inside of a school. He's seeing kind of two different parts of it. And so just having you guys as a partner, I think helps as well.
Yeah, well, we appreciate that. And we thank you so much for taking the time today to share. And hopefully our participants walked away with some real great best practices and strategies that they can go back. But I think your main message is, be organized, be consistent, and then collaborate with others. So again, we thank you for your participation in conversation with educators, and hope you all have a great day. Thanks so much, Libby, for sharing.
Guys, good to see you.
Take care.
All right, bye-bye.
Bye.
Thanks for joining us. If you want to learn more about college and career readiness, graduation tracking, teacher growth, assessment coordination, be sure to subscribe to our newsletter. Until next time.